Welcome back. This is Making Sense with your host, Rob Case. The purpose of this show is to educate and empower you, the individual. The freedom of the individual under God is the cornerstone of freedom, but we are told otherwise. The reason why we are told otherwise is agenda-driven. Its motive is to corrupt and transform us to be at war with God, who is the only source of freedom available, and in turn embrace government as the final authority for which to live our lives as it writes a new morality. Once you eliminate God, you eliminate liberty. And when you eliminate liberty, you invite the presence of a very stealth and controlling political entity who could care less about your well-being, but will, without hesitation, exploit it to empower himself. We are seeing this all across the country. At the time of this broadcast, liberal Democrats are in control of everything. Everything. The quote-unquote goodwill that liberalism promises America is not seen or by all means felt by a majority of Americans at this time. At this moment, fear is running the day. People are deathly afraid of losing their jobs, and for very good reason. When the economy was excellent, people compiled massive debt. And why not? When the economy was great, all people expected was for everything to get greater. And it did, until this set of Democrats took over in 2007. Now, the massive debt that many Americans have now serves as a trap for them, as uncertainty grows as to whether or not Americans are going to be able to keep their jobs and pay down their enormous debts. After the election of 2006, my dad and I forecasted that everything would go straight to hell once the Democrats took over. And why not? When you subtract from economic prosperity and subtract efficiency by putting in place ridiculous regulations and so forth, you will have very little, if not nothing, at the very end. Taxes consume wealth. Regulation consumes efficiency, depending on what regulations they are, of course. But taxes eat away earned wealth. Producers produce wealth, and taxation consumes wealth. My dad has an interesting and very accurate saying. He told me that your money is your freedom. If they can take away your money, they can take away your freedom. How right he is. More and more, government is intruding where it doesn't belong, and more it is requiring that you and me pay up. We are nothing more than cash cows to most of these politicians in Washington, with no other value other than what wealth we can produce for them. We can attempt to dethrone the impact of the only source of freedom when it comes to our holidays, but we will not dethrone the almighty dollar come the holy holiday of April 15th, Income Tax Day. It feels as though we live in a different world. If I were to share with you the history of America, it would feel very foreign. Some of you would be heavily interested. Some of you would be intrigued. Some of you would feel shock, and some of you would feel betrayed. Those of you who would feel betrayed would do so because the stuff I tell you, I guarantee you never heard in school. You would have had to do your own independent research to know what I would tell you. America's history seems so foreign to how things are run today, and there is ample reason for this. What has established freedom in America has now been reversed, and everything, as a result, is going backwards. In other words, America is completely corrupt to what it once was. Rather than the government answering to the people who elected them, the people, ignorant of their history, now have to answer to the government. Along the way, we Americans have also gotten spoiled rotten. When you have everything you could possibly want, without much struggle, you take what you have for granted. And when you take what you have for granted, your mind rots as it has no previous harsh experience to remind you that everything you have isn't a given. You have to earn it. Take, for example, the early days of the American experiment. Those in the Revolutionary War knew firsthand, by hard experience, that freedom was not a given. It had to be paid for with blood, and maintained with a lot of alertness, stress, blood, sweat, and the fear of it all being taken away with a vengeance if they so much as let their guard down for one moment. If the founding fathers who participated in the revolution lost what they had accumulated, not only would they have been punished by the King of England, but the king would have had to make sure that such a rebellion like that could never again take place. Measures would have had to have been taken to prevent a future rebellion, and everything would have continued as it did up to this particular moment right now. The founders had to win at that point in history, or lose it all, risk losing it all forever. As a result, we would not have any of the things that we are so accustomed to having right now. Today, however, we find ourselves in a stranger situation. If America was invaded tomorrow, a takeover, I'd expect, would be relatively easy. This is kind of harsh, but I say that because it seems as though too many people, way too many, are ignorant of our history, too trusting of charismatic politicians, and are too brainwashed into thinking that America was founded on evil, that it is maintained by evil, and that its evil pollutes the rest of the world. And so the solution to people who think like this would be to act more like Europe. And then hopefully people would like us more. As this show progresses, I seek to do my part to eliminate this, and use this program as a tool to the best of my ability, restore our history, and with that, restore within us a new sense of pride and a drive to take it to a new level of happiness not felt in years. Let's restore our confidence. America has been a great country. It has liberated millions from tyranny. It has been a vital tool in the prosperity of the world, and it continues to be a beacon for freedom. The only thing right now standing in the way of America's God-given potential are secular humanists who seek to turn America into a mediocre socialist state. In politics, there are two ideologies. There is a prevailing truth, and then there is rebellion to that truth. A factor that has existed ever since the leading angel Lucifer led multitudes of angels to a war in heaven to rebel against God, and to take over his kingdom to elevate himself as absolute ruler. Since that event, the very same conflict remains. A lust for total control by force is in rebellion against freedom. Efforts to remove the moral element and the value of human life by eliminating God is at new disturbing levels, and government is doing all it can to stand in the way of your right to prosper by taking away, subtracting more of your money to enrich itself. When the people suffer most economically, the government prospers most. Force is what is required to guarantee a desired result. There are always modern equivalents to previous and ancient behaviors, and the elements remain today as they did at the beginning of America. If you read the Declaration of Independence, there are striking similarities between the complaints lodged against King George III and the concerns leveled against our current president, President Barack Obama. When we come back, I'm going to tell you about the situation we find ourselves in, and let's not see if we can come up with some solutions to try to combat this when we return.